Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, the spiritualist movement has a long history in the good old USA. Contacting entities from the other side might be possible, but is it a good idea? Can we trust what the spirits tell us, or do they have ulterior motives? So many questions. So let's go beyond the veil. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight I'm drinking a vodka soda. Grapefruit sparkling soda, to be exact. How about you boys?
Ooh, very nice. I'm having myself a tequila drink with one of those not carbonated, somehow calorie-free, but still tastes like a fruit drinks. And it's grapefruit and tequila, and it's nice.
I am drinking another cider, and I won't make the same cider joke, but this one is a huckleberry cider. It's pretty good. It's sweet and syrupy, and I am in cider heaven right now.
Yeah. I'm a cider fan now because I found out they're gluten-free, you know? It's my thing now.
Well, you know what's my thing?
What?
Spiritualism.
Oh. Ooh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
what you got?
Spiritualism. So this podcast, we are going to talk about some freaky shit on the other side of the veil. But first, I want to bring attention to what spiritualism is. It's not that you don't know what it is, but it's not like the most used term today. So we're going to talk about mediums and some freaky stories and the history behind spiritualism in America, which is cool. So I want to start out with this article from Washington Post. It's 2019. It says, interested in traveling to a spiritualist community? Here's what you need to know. Can I just point out one weird fact? Every publication keeps using this. Here's what you need to know. Okay, so let's break down this article. Interested in traveling to a spiritual community. Here's what you need to know. So Greg Newkirk, we talked about him a little bit on this podcast and some of the supernatural stuff that they do. He's a paranormal investigator and a travel writer, and so he talks about some of these places where spiritualist communities, not really like yoga classes and stuff, but this is where people go and speak to the dead. There's mediums, there's psychics, there's all sorts of craziness. You can stay in haunted hotels and bed and breakfasts and that kind of stuff. And so he breaks down some of the top ones that actually have been built since the 1800s. So here's the ones you can visit. Lilydale, New York, and Cassadaga, Florida, were both established in the 1800s during the religious spiritual peak. And then the oldest one, which is called the psychic capital of the world, is a 57-acre camp established in 1874, 20 miles from Daytona Beach. And this is where all the people hang out that talk to dead people. So if you want to talk to dead people, this is where you go. But the interesting thing is...
Wait, hold on. What is it called? It's near Daytona Beach. That's all I got. Is there a name for this place?
It's just literally called the psychic capital of the world.
Oh, okay. That is what it's called. Okay, cool.
7-acre camp established in 1874. This is apparently the most famous one. But it's not as haunted as the Cassadaga Hotel, which is another location. But it is definitely a place where a lot of these people go to talk to the other side, talk to the dead, whatever you can't see, this is where you go.
So it does feel like that there's specific places where was the energy more concentrated there? Is it like, is spirits just like to hang out on Florida beaches? Like what's the deal with that?
I mean, wouldn't you, if you were like retired from life, wouldn't you go down to Daytona Beach and be like, hey, I don't want to be up there in cold New York? Well, I don't really have an answer for you, but I want to go into a little bit of spiritualism history in America because it was this time period that kind of opened this door to this new way of looking at life, and then it quickly closed. So the reason why they probably picked the New York location is because modern spiritualism began in the 1840s in a small town in New York. It quickly grew to become the greatest, the most diverse religious movement of the 19th century, Almost all historians point to the movement beginning in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, where sisters Maggie and Kate Fox began communicating with the spirit in their home through rapping and knocking. So the girls became a phenomenon, and what they did was they started other people figuring out how to speak to the other side, which is weird.
Okay.
Right? So there's not just two people in the whole world that have this gift. It's like people are like, wait a second, I think I can talk to the dead too. But when this started, so in 1848, this started as kind of like a cool thing that people were doing. But a lot of people were gravitating towards it because it was a different way of looking at life. It was more about the immortality of the soul. And especially during the Civil War, when they really couldn't see the end or the death of their loved ones because they died on the battlefield somewhere, they really wanted to have closure. So this idea of spiritualism became this new religion, this new way of looking at life. Instead of blind faith, like you would if you went to church and, God's going to take care of whoever didn't come back from the war, it was proof because, things would come through the wall, messages would come through the medium, objects would move, that kind of thing. So this was like proof that they were actually dealing with their dead loved one.
Mm-hmm.
So it became the new religion of America at this time.
Ooh, I would have joined that religion for sure.
Right. This is stronger. This took over even more so than today. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, there's places down south that didn't really do spiritualism, but they did incorporate talking to the dead through some of the Baptist church and stuff. They would do these things where they would speak to the other side. So they just kind of masked it in church a little bit, but it became a thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So spiritualism also rebelled against traditional religious authority. It emphasized radical individualism. An individual outlook meant that spiritualism was the sole religion of the time and saw women as equals. So the only time women were allowed to speak in public was when they became a female medium. So this kind of champions the ideas of women's suffrage and equal rights because this is the only time women could speak. And they would say that they were getting these messages from the other side, and the messages were talking about equal rights for everyone, white people, black people, women, men, and of course the white men didn't like this, so they would just call these women Satan. But this was the first time that women could speak out on ideas about free love and understanding, and use it as a guise for the spirit realm, speaking through them, which is really interesting.
Ooh, that is super cool and super interesting. That had something to do with the women's rights movement, and that's that's really interesting that women could only really talk in public or have an opinion if they said they were channeling a ghost or someone from the other side. I mean,
I didn't know that, but I mean, it makes sense. But that kind of leads itself to, who are the fake mediums and who are the real ones. So one thing. Oh
yeah, because it probably spawned all these fake ones, so they could get their voice out, and all the charlatans jumped on there to make money and blah blah blah. But really, that probably shrouded the truth. Because I think it's real based off the evidence I've seen. But there probably so many people came out of the woodworks, and so many people were charlatans and fake and forging and just being devious that ruined it for the real people. But go on.
Yeah, I agree. With the onslaught of the Civil War, the number of spiritualists in the United States blossomed. By the end of the war, a reported 11 million people subscribed to spiritualism, and 35,000 were practicing mediums.
Whoa!
So you can imagine that 35,000 people are practicing this. Some people are using it as a place to speak their mind about where the country should be going, and other people are literally speaking to the dead. So in 1920. Spiritualism skeptics, including the world-famous magician Harry Houdini, was like, I ain't going to put up with this shit anymore because I'm the real deal. I'm going to shut down all those people that are talking shit.
Wasn't there something to do with, he developed a hatred for it because he went to see one of the major mediums of the time, and they were supposed to... They were supposed to be channeling his dead parents or something like that, and they completely got their nationality incorrect. is he Hungarian or something like that? I forget where he's from. So they started speaking with like some Italian accent or something like that, where he obviously knew, oh, these people are full of shit. And this was one of like the biggest, most popular mediums of the time, and that's where he developed like, hey, hang on a second, bunch of
but he didn't just like talk out against them. He actually took them to court. There was a whole Congress hearing where him and a bunch of other people were kind of putting these people in, like, not like the witch hunts, but sort of like that, where like they literally had a Congress hearing on who was doing magic and who was talking to the other side and who was credible. I mean, it was like a real deal. Like, it took up Congress, this whole thing.
Oh, I love that. That's the world I want to live in.
So if you can imagine, since 1848 till about 1920, most of the country was into spiritualism, which was really the idea of growing the self, the individual look at life and death and what happens on the other side. And then come 1920, we started to swing back to, let's just listen to what everybody says in the church. So it's kind of interesting. And I know this podcast, we're gonna talk about proof that stuff does happen on the other side and comes through. But I just want to give everybody a little background of just America's involvement in the spiritualism movement.
All right. I learned something today. Thank you, Melissa.
Wow, that was really cool.
No problem.
I just love that there was a time where these things were more commonly accepted. And I feel like we're cresting to another era where that's going to happen again. And in some ways, you could say that same movement is alive today. And maybe we had just to wait 50 years for it to come. But today I wanted to like break down definitive proof that mediumship is 100% real and that it exists. It's been verified. It's been studied. It's so bizarre and beautiful and amazing and not scary. Just like Hollywood, they ruin everything and make it seem like it's some scary thing because it happens in the dark. Oh, no, but it's not.
God damn it, Hollywood.
Screw you, Hollywood. But I have actually, speaking of Hollywood, what I'm going to break down to you quickly is the SCOLE experiments, the SCOLE experiments. It is, what it consists of is overwhelming evidence of life after death through trance mediumship or physical mediumship, where they're in a trance state channeling these entities. So there's actually going to be a movie that's being developed about this right now. It's the producer is the guy who produced your show you like, Melissa, that you recommended to me, The Messiah, on Netflix. It's a guy named Rory Rooney, and it's in development. They have a bunch of screenplays. You could see this in the theater, and I definitely think it should be a movie. I'm not sure of the dramatic human angle on it yet, because I just went deep into facts and stuff, but I'm interested to see the lives of these mediums and what they did. But let me break this down for you. So in 1993 to 1998, they ran a 5-year, 500-session, 1,000-hour, multi-country, multidisciplinary experiment testing paranormal evidence for life after death in other dimensions of conscious existence. This mostly took place in Scole, UK, which is near Norfolk, apparently, and it mostly took place in the home of the two people who ran the studies. They're called the Foys, F-O-Y-S, and their names are Robin and Sandra Foy, and they're people who've been into this their whole life, researching psychic stuff. Most of these experiments took place in the Foy's basement, and they called it the Skull Hole.
The Skull Hole.
The Skull Hole?
Yeah, Ooh. It sounds vaguely inappropriate, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, it does.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
The two mediums they used for these experiments were a husband and wife named Alan and Diana Bennett. And they were just normal folk who developed these abilities. But both of them could do it. The guy was a carpenter, and she was an intuitive and a healer, and I think they trained each other. So during these experiments, the craziest things happened. Remember, this whole point of this was to get tangible evidence that life after death exists, that there are beings on the other side, or that we cross to the other side, and I think they did that. So who were they talking with? They called it the spirit team. So the Bennetts made contact with what they call the spirit team, which included apparently
spirit team. Go spirit.
I know, it sounds awesome.
Okay,
thousands of minds working together. So apparently that's what they said. There were thousands of minds. So I think different voices and different people would come in all the time. But the team knew. The spirit team was on their side. They knew what they were up to. They're like, oh, you guys want to get tangible evidence so we can alleviate human suffering and alleviate the fear of death. And the spirit team was on board with that. So they were helping them actively create these events. And I guess it's not easy for people on the other side either. It's not like they can just show up and be like, hey, look at me, I'm manifesting, ooh, and they leave. It's not that easy. So if they had to work for it too. It does. It hurts. So here's a kind of a list of things that happen. The first thing I want to say is that most of the time when you're in these experiments, you feel an overwhelming feeling of love. Sometimes it's in the dark, sometimes it's not. But it's a warm, fuzzy kind of experience for the most part. It's not a scary thing that you see in Hollywood,
What do you mean sometimes you're in the dark and sometimes you're not?
Well, they do these in the dark, not because they're trying to be shady. They're doing it because the